What's going on, everybody? Doc and Sloth back yet again, bringing you a little bit more Halo Wars 2 action. And we're actually pretty excited for this. So we're going to do a two-part series. It's going to be two videos. Part one, we're talking unit comparisons. So me and Sloth, we took some time last night, actually quite a bit of time put in looking at Blitz-specific units to try to kind of determine and at least give a baseline for some of the differences. One things we talked about that we really were kind of unsure about, and there wasn't a lot of statistical data out there to kind of determine, how much better were certain units compared to their maybe upgraded versions. So we actually have a spreadsheet. We did some testing. We're going to show you how we did it, and then we're going to talk about kind of our methodology and what kind of the comparisons that we ended up coming up with, and some of the the facts essentially for specific units. The best way to kind of explain this is how does a prowling reaver and a regular reaver compare? So we looked at time to kill for specific units. We looked at health. We looked at energy cost. So we hope this is going to be something good and a good spreadsheet just to give you guys a little bit more deeper understanding of what you're getting kind of comparative to energy cost, as well as how much better is a certain unit, the veteran side unit compared to its regular counterpart. So we're going to jump in again. We're going to talk Banished for this one. We'll have another video going up probably about exactly the same time for unit comparisons for the UNSC. We're going to jump into this and just show you kind of how we did this first. That way, if you want to replicate this at all, you can do your own testing. By no means is this 100% set with what we've got, because we do have some units that are leveled up. So we made sure on the spreadsheet, you'll see we show you unit, we show you what veteran level we had it at when we tested with it. We show you the unit that we put it up against. And we try to, for the most part, make it a unit that it was at least neutral to, and sometimes a unit that it was good against, because in certain instances, like we're going to show you the Reaver here when we get into this, it makes sense that's the unit that you want to fight those air units. So we tried to do as best we can to limit it to only a few specific units that we ran everything against. But again, that was kind of our methodology for this. And then we also talk about what veteran level we fought that specific unit against, just so you have a baseline to understand. And then the biggest things you're going to take away is going to really be time to kill, kind of comparative to the energy costs for the unit, as well as health. We actually did see quite a bit of change for some of the more veteran units in changes in their health, and we got some good takeaways. So we're jumping into this. Sloth, he's going to kind of pick it up from here because he ran most of the Banished units for me, and I'm just going to kind of show you what we did here. All we did was jump into a 1v1 private match. The nice thing is, if you don't collect any points or you have a tie at the end, this game will just continue until somebody grabs a single point. So we figured this out, which was nice because then it allowed us to kind of run through this and kind of do what we're doing. And we're just collecting energy at this point. And Sloth, I actually already have a Prowling Reaver in. If you want to get some
very good
Nightingales going, and if you want to make any,
got one
kind of stole the show from me here a little bit, but
that's all right. We kind of had to put our thinking caps on a little bit for how this was to go, because like Doc said, our main goal is to figure out which is better, a veteran Cyclops, a reactive Cyclops, or a standard Cyclops, as far as the ratio of money spent, energy spent to actually time to kill and health and all that. So we wanted to see a good idea of the comparison of the benefits. So that's kind of what we wanted to do here. We tried to keep our variables consistent across not just different types of Cyclops, but also different types of infantry when it made sense. So you'll see on a lot of this, we tried to keep a lot of those variables the same. We considered, things like the hunters and stuff. We took those into account. So all of our other brutes and elites and grunts all went up against Cyclops, but the hunters went up against Wolverines because it just makes sense. They are infantry, but they're not the same type of unit. So we tried to do things that made sense like that. The the one big hurdle we had that Doc kind of mentioned is veteran level. We can't really control our veteran level in Blitz.
Right.
So we kind of ran up against, okay, let's do this as consistent as possible. So we tried to keep things in there, and we made sure to give you the veteran level of everything, because sometimes you'll see like the elite rangers, the standard elite rangers at 30 energy, they actually have a much faster time to kill than their more expensive assault elite comparisons. And that's because they're level 3, whereas the assault elites are level 1. So, you can kind of see that and kind of make a little bit of a judgment call for yourself. But we'll actually show you here. Doc's going to bring us up a Reaver,
Yep.
and I'm going to have a Nightingale. And what we did is we just pulled out a stopwatch, and as soon as that first missile hits, bam, we're going to start it up. So we sit here and we just watch them, and we keep our stopwatch going. And is this a Prowling Reaver?
This is the standard. So again, Sloth ran the Banished side, so you'll see on the actual spreadsheet, which again is linked down to the comments below. You guys can pull it up, take a look at it, view it. You can actually save your own copy and make your adjustments. But I have a level 3, whereas he had level 2, so we went off of his testing. But like you said, as soon as it finished, we just took the time to kill for that specific unit. For his unit, it ended up being, what was that one? It ended up being 18.21. So pretty good. And then we essentially just swapped it, and we ran the same exact test against the same exact unit, just obviously with the Prowling Reaver at this point. And again, this one works out nice because this one was, we both had this at level 1. And again, just running this the same. And as you guys can see in the spreadsheet, again, this is just kind of our comparison. We just wanted to give you a quick a rundown of exactly how we did this, so you guys are seeing it. On a slightly side note, if you do need to get your restoration challenge done, the achievement for using restoration powers, and you are going to do some testing, this is actually a good way to do it. We ended up, I think, both finishing it as well. So again,
Yeah,
all we did
very
there,
fast. Just cycle through everything else.
same unit, and just comparing time. And again, as Sloth said, trying to keep as much of the variables the same. And again, we also did look at shields and health, just to kind of give a basis, so you can kind of understand. And like he said, we can't control veteran level, but as much as we can, we think we're making a pretty good comparison for a lot of these units. So Sloth, I think we can back out of this, and we'll go kind of more specific units. Anything you want to show and highlight, we'll go into the card library. And any real major takeaways, again, you guys can look at the spreadsheet, take a gander through it, and let us know what you think. But I think hopefully this will be helpful for you guys. And finally, we have some at least statistical baseline data for us to run. We'll probably look at continuing to refine this, maybe as we get certain units up to the same veteran level. I think that would be more beneficial. But obviously that's going to take us some time opening some packs. And again, we really can't help it. So at least we have a baseline here where we can start from. So I will jump into the card library. Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, it makes me not want to open up any packs.
Right.
I want to keep everything the same. Yeah, it's as far as the Banished side goes, there's quite a few different variations of a lot of the units. So, like I talked about, the Elite Rangers, super cheap at 30. They actually ended up for us being a little bit stronger than the Assault Elites because of veteran level. I believe wholeheartedly. To me, I'm gonna say, with my experience with them and looking at the numbers, I'm going to say they're the same unit. You're just paying 20 extra energy to have the rush ability.
Right.
Pretty standard. It makes sense. The big thing for me is I was getting a lot of veteran level in grunts in the grunt mob. And the thing that we found is my grunts were level 4, and they're 10 energy, they're super cheap. They pop in, you get 1 unit. The big thing with the grunt mob, they are a little bit more expensive at 50, but you get 3 of those units with the rush ability all at once.
Right.
And in our testing, we found that those individual grunt squads, they're the exact same. So literally all the grunt mob is 3 groups of grunts shoved in together. So you call them in once and you get 3 units, and you get the rush ability on top of those,
Right.
which is pretty cool. We actually ended up discovering that the blood fuel grunts are pretty much the only reason to use Decimus.
Right.
They are awesome. They beat out the others by, I mean, a good, 9 seconds?
Yep.
as far as killing a Cyclops. They beat out every other grunt squad by 9 seconds. I mean, that's substantial. That's legitimate. We saw some interesting things, kind of with some of the ironclad units. They weren't particularly stronger. They were just kind of there to take more damage. That was just kind of it. At least as far as the hunters go, the ironclad wraiths were stronger, but the ironclad hunters were a little bit weaker. They were a lower veteran level, but I mean, we're looking at a full second.
Right.
A second and a quarter difference. So I mean that's pretty substantial too.
But I think, real quick, I think the biggest thing, like you said here, is we're just getting more health. And that was one thing I'm glad we took a look at. Because if they would have been the same health and had that guard ability, I would have kind of questioned the guard ability. But I think across the board with the Banished and the UNSC side, I think I'd have to check the numbers specifically, but I think in each instance, they are getting just a little bit more health. And like you said, the Ironclad Hunters, they get an additional health level, and then the Ironclad Wraith compared to the regular Wraith actually gets 2 additional health. So that's, I think, what you're really paying for as far as the additional energy cost on top of the guard ability obviously. But I think that, honestly, I think in most instances actually makes it worth it, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, and even if they are the exact same damage output, those reasons you stated are exactly why it's worth it.
Right.
The increase in health and the guard ability, they just totally make it worth it. We talked a little bit about the blood fuel grunts being the only reason to use Decimus. That's because the Terror Chopper is kind of meh. It's 3 times the price of a normal chopper, and it's going to be roughly about the same as far as damage goes. That shock didn't help it a ton. We actually had a hard time keeping it alive. It was going against an anti-air Wolverine, and the Wolverine was beating the snot out of it.
Yeah.
And it was not great. The kind of the flip side on that is also the Marauder War Chief. I liked the idea of the Marauder War Chief with Decimus. Turns out, not so good. He's kind of in the middle. He's a little bit better than a standard Marauder, but not by much. And he's actually 40 energy more than a standard Marauder. So all of this is going to make me really rethink Decimus. I kind of thought he was on the lower end of the scale. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in the basement now. He has the blood fuel grunts, and that's about it. All the other stuff for him is not making me want to use him. Whereas on the flip side, we all know that I'm a big fan of the Shipmaster. His ghosts are not great, which we kind of knew that they were more about speed, and they're just kind of a cheap 30 energy unit. But the Prowling Marauder, it is expensive at 120, but that thing puts out some damage. That thing was 9 seconds faster than the standard Marauder. So or the Marauder War Chief. No, I'm sorry. That's correct. It's the standard Marauder. That's substantial. And having the cloak ability and having 3 more health bars, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You can't beat that. So I was always hesitant to use the Prowling Marauder a little bit because I just kind of always was worried about sending a scout unit in, and I'm going to spend 120 energy on something that's just going to go collect energy cores. Not anymore. I'm going to really focus on incorporating that Prowling Marauder into that group. Does good damage. He has that cloak for the first 90 seconds, and he's got a decent amount of health. That's really cool.
Right. So real quick here, the best way, I think, and I hope we made this clear, but when you're looking at this, obviously you can look at, again, the vehicles in total, but you're going to get the best value out of grouping the same units together and just looking at their different levels and the different versions that they have. So obviously you can make some comparisons, maybe against like the Chopper and the Ghost, but you can't really 100% compare a Chopper and a Marauder, in our opinion. A lot of times you're just looking at the base Marauders, and then obviously looking at the different versions, which again, Sloth, I 100% agree. The Prowling Marauder, totally worth the extra energy cost, because it is by far the best unit. Now, the only thing with the Marauder War Chief that we didn't really test wholeheartedly is the rally ability, but as a single unit, it's definitely not nearly as good as the Prowling Marauder. So just to make that clear, but again, you can take some stuff away from this as well, in the vehicle category, but you also, again, have to look at what are they strong against, what are they weak against. And again, here we are trying to make it a baseline unit, same across the board. So at least you had kind of a good baseline for statistical data that you could use to kind of make your comparisons. I just want to make that abundantly clear while we kind of continue looking at this.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And if we talked about trying to find a metric, trying to come up with some kind of equation that we could say, okay, time to kill is X divided by, energy cost and all this stuff equals, to have something, some metric to say X is better than Y. It just, with the veteran levels and stuff, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be viable, and we don't want to just make up numbers and throw stuff out there. So it doesn't seem like that's viable at this point, but that's exactly why we made it. You hit the nail on the head. Is to look at this and compare and say, why am I using the Prowling Marauder instead of the Marauder War Chief, or vice versa?
Right.
So, I mean, I really think we were successful with this. I hope you guys do enjoy this, because we spent quite a few hours on this. We burning the midnight oil a little bit, and then just kind of putting a lot of legwork and time in. But I think this is helpful, because I wanted to know how much the Blood Fuel Locust was nerfed from the beta, and not looking great. It's still better than the standard Locust.
Right.
I kind of thought that maybe they would be the same damage output and just get the health back instead. But he is a little bit stronger. But to be honest, it doesn't feel like a bad change. He doesn't feel all that OP. We've had one game where we just kind of got Locust spammed, but other than that, we've not really seen that anymore.
Right.
We saw that a lot in the beta, and we've not seen that now. So that's surprising to me to see that comparison. Blisterback and Enduring Blisterback. This one was one of the biggest surprises for me on the Banished side. Standard Blisterback had 2 veteran levels over the Enduring, but it killed a full 6 seconds faster than the Enduring Blisterback, and it had more health.
Right.
The Enduring Blisterback had 1 less health bar and killed slower. And I don't know that it's purely based on veteran level as far as this goes, because the Enduring Blisterback was shooting slower.
Mm-hmm.
It would pop off a bunch of the missiles, and you'd sit there, and I think there was twice that I said, is he out of range? Because he stopped firing. He
Right.
just completely stopped firing. And we had to sit there and tick, 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 tick. Oh, he's firing again. Okay. Whereas the same spot with the Blisterback, we're popping rounds really consistently, and we're keeping damage out there. So that one felt like, to me, they didn't want the Enduring Blisterback to be too crazy, having those 3 additional units that pop out after it dies.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like they nerfed the damage a little bit. Well, maybe damage, maybe speed of attack, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
The damage output, we'll put it that way. Nerf the damage output, nerf the health just a little bit to kind of make it a little bit more even.
It almost, to me,
And
it seems like they want this thing to die, which is the point.
yeah,
It should die. You should be able to use the last stand ability, but the thing that really rung true to me was it having less health. I expected it to have the same or maybe an additional health bar. And obviously, again, veteran level, we do have the 2 differences, so we don't know if we level this up to 3 and maybe test it again, maybe it will have the same health. But as it stands right now with what we've been able to see, it seems like they almost want this unit to die, which does make sense. But all great points, Sloth.
yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, this stuff has been really surprising, and just in the kind of the interest of time, I'll wrap this up here a little bit. Being a big fan of the Shipmaster, we talked a lot in the beta and a lot about Shipmaster's first build. Banshee versus Unstable Banshee. 60 energy versus 130. What we did see is the Unstable Banshee does have 2 more health and is a good 5 seconds faster to kill than the standard Banshee. So it doesn't just look cooler. It doesn't just look like it's doing more damage. It is. It's pretty solid. And we've seen here in the last few days, we've used a lot of the blast abilities.
Mm-hmm.
The blast ability is insane.
Yes, it is.
It's super strong. If you can hold them in that circle until they blow up, you're taking out an army. And I mean, we've shown it a couple times to each other that it can happen.
Oh yeah.
So having that extra damage, having that extra health, and then being able to blast is crazy.
Yep.
This I'm definitely Definitely relooking at the unstable Banshee. I've actually had it in my decks here recently just because I've not been able to pull all that many great cards for the Banished, and Shipmaster in particular. So that's something that I think is probably going to stick around for me. And I wholeheartedly encourage another look at it to kind of check it out. The last thing we have are just the heroes. Traxxas Chosen, surprise, is fantastic. We all kind of knew that was coming. It seems like the heroes have mostly 17 health. Traxxas Chosen actually has 14. So I think that's one thing they kind of did to tweak him down just a little bit from the beta, because he was awesome. It looks like his range is still pretty good, and his damage is obviously pretty fantastic. At 210, I mean, he is the most expensive banished hero, but that just kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and
Um,
it makes sense that
Honor
he has a
Guard.
little bit less
Sorry.
health just because he can't hit those air units, which is the significant kind of drawback when you look at the other two banished heroes. So I think it makes sense that he just has less health. They make him a little bit more squishy, just to kind of counteract the fact that you have the other two that can't actually hit the air units.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that at first. Um, and that kind of segues really well into the Honor Guard and the Warlord. They can't hit those air units, and they're going to be at 17 instead. They're going to be just a tiny hair bit cheaper, and they're both going to be pretty close, about a second difference. Honor Guard is fast, 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 fast. He always surprises me when I see him running across the field. The dude is a sprinter, whereas the Warlord's a little bit slower, but he does have that siphon ability, and he does just slightly less damage, probably just to keep him in a spot where he can be killed.
Right,
Because if he was doing a ton of damage with that siphon ability, he would just be unkillable
right.
unless you brought in a ton of air units. So that's kind of the big thing. We really hope you check out the spreadsheet here, and we hope it helps. We spent really a lot of time on this. We will probably revisit and do some other things maybe shortly, because this one was purely, like we said, to compare grunt versus grunt mob versus blood fuel grunt, etc., etc. But maybe at one point we'll say, okay, how are the elite rangers versus the marines,
Right,
because right now we basically have a different variable in the unit that they killed.
right.
So we kept like units together, but as far as crossing UNSC and Banish, we didn't do that yet. Maybe here soon. Hopefully this gets some good feedback and some good response, because this took a lot of time. So sometimes it's nice to hear a little bit back from things like that, so that we can know what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. So maybe we can make that next one a little bit better.
Yeah, so definitely let us know in the comments below. Let us know again if, like Sauce said, if this was helpful, if you were able to pull some good stuff. I know we were. So I know when we look at deck construction, we're going to do some deck updates here shortly. We're going to implement this spreadsheet and utilize some of this, and hopefully you guys do too. Check it out. Let us know, if maybe you do some statistical analysis and find some other findings. And like he said, we might look at additional abilities. We were talking about leader powers, trying to determine, how can we kind of base some of that stuff off. So we'll continue to grow this for sure. But again, hopefully this was helpful. Check out part 2. We're going to talk UNSC as well, which again should be up at about the same time. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you enjoyed the in-depth comparison, and definitely check the spreadsheet out and give us your feedback. I've been Doc. That's Miss Sloth. We are Average Gamer Guys. Thank you so much for checking us out. Make sure to subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and do all that good stuff. We do appreciate all the support. We will check you next time.